see it? I don't see it.
Mm-mm. I don't see it.
There it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see it.
2 minutes to pop up. See, we're quiet now. I can turn up, like right now, you can talk. You can say, hey, I was getting ready to go. When you want to go in, I hit the intro and just roll.
However, I need about 2 minutes to put it up. Yo, I am Coach Mo, and this is the Evening Social Podcast with TJ Roberts, the owner of Kinship Cafe. And we are live streaming on our Jenna Club TV YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe. Tonight's live stream is brought to you in part by New Wall Street, an investment education community. We're happy to have my good guy, Chris Dunlap, here with us in the audience, and we hope to hear from him a little later. Now, I gotta say this, that I am so excited to be here at Kinship Cafe, 719 North 6th Street in KCK, the best coffee in KC. And then here with my guy TJ Roberts, who has allowed us become partners with us, and this is where the home of the Evening Social Podcast is.
Man.
All right, so appreciate you being here. Let's jump right back into our interview. We just came from a segment. I want to go to touch just a little bit about childhood, just a little bit.
Okay.
All right. So let's talk about where you were born.
So I was born actually at Truman Medical in Kansas City, Missouri.
Okay.
And then I was adopted. I went through foster care for about a year and a half and then was adopted and raised in Wamego, Kansas, which is like a really, really small town. I think
Close to Wichita?
it's actually more close to like Manhattan, Kansas.
Manhattan, okay.
So it's about 20 minutes east of Manhattan, and I would say maybe 15 to 1,800 people live there. So pretty small place. My school graduating class was like in the 50s. And I was the first African-American male to graduate from the high school in history. So there was a lot of unique things along with like being born with like 7 fingers that created some adversity for me growing up that I had to kind of maneuver and navigate through.
Okay.
So yeah, that's kind
Now,
of
that's
where
something I want to ask you about for our listeners. Can you talk just a little bit about dealing with differences? Dealing with the differences, and I'm not just talking about appearance, but I'm also talking about, not having a traditional family, just differences in general.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how you dealt with them? Because you've come a long way from those times to ownership in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately it was more like, first of all, from a male's perspective, where if you don't have a father figure or one that looks like you, it's hard to know where you can go. So it's like, I think one of the things that I think I learned was just like, someone had said like, well, when someone would say something like, well, I know where my ceiling is. And I never understood that. And so I would always like sit at home and I would think like, what does that even mean? And I would always think like, well, that's probably in reference of something. Like that means they have something they've seen. Like they have a reference of knowing where they're gonna go. So there's a ceiling in their world that they can actually visually see themselves hitting. And I'm sitting here going, well, why don't I have that type of reference? Like, oh, well, I don't have anyone that I'm looking up to that looks like me that I want to be like. So there was a lot of things that like you had to understand and figure out on your own. But I think ultimately when you're in the fight of differences, like it's kind of that fight or flight moment. And for me, it was always like, I was kind of the guy that would just duke it out in the corner. You know what I mean? And so I would say like, for those who have differences, man, I was like, my parents kind of like coddled me when it came to the differences of my hand. And just like, oh, well, God made you unique and special in his way and this, that, and the other. And I'm not saying that was like a bad thing that they did because it was helpful. But when I got older and the world got more real, I realized like I was way different than everybody else. Okay. And so what I would guess is if you are different, like obviously you realize you're different. But I think the difference in understanding that you're different is taking ownership and loving and appreciating what you're different about, you know, and then learning to find a ground to agree with and appreciate the things that you don't agree with and that you have differences, opinions on or something, you know. It's like, how can you find common ground? So I think like in a lot of things, when I came with differences, it was like, I know I'm different, therefore like I'm gonna have a different response or approach or preparation to something, but that doesn't mean I can't achieve it. So that was like my mindset going into stuff. But knowing that I was different and hitting like being on that journey and hitting all those like setbacks and disappointments and people saying like, you can't do this, you can't be this, like that thing, pointing out my differences, like I'm saying, well, I appreciate what I'm different about. So you're just pointing out the things that I love about me. So I'm just gonna keep going. And then it was more of that plus, well then now I just get to prove them wrong.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so then it was that whole aspect, and that to me was something that was meaningful, because as I kept looking back and they kept staying where they were and I kept growing, I knew that I didn't even have to say I told you so, because they saw it. You know, they saw me on the squad. They saw me traveling. They saw me being able to be in the jersey and hang out and do things with the team. So it's like I didn't have to say I told you so. Like you can see it with who I'm rocking with. So that was just like probably the biggest thing I tell people is like, if you know you're different, take ownership in knowing that you're different, and then try to figure out the best way to spend enough time with yourself to just love yourself. And when you have that love, you gain confidence, and then when people point out those differences, hey, iron sharpens iron. Use that as fuel and go be your best self and just keep proving them wrong. Keep going, keep trying to progress. Like that's the thing. Like we're getting started here. Where we're at and where I want to be at in 5 years has to look different, right? Because I'm trying to perfect my craft. I got a new machine. I get all this time now to learn this new machine and learn the people and the community and build something here. So it's not going to look the same. You know, it has to look different. So you have to continue to adapt, evolve, and grow. And I think you do that by knowing your differences, overcoming them, equipping yourself to have confidence to just run through a brick wall if you have to.
I love it. I appreciate you giving that part of yourself to our listeners and being willing to discuss that. So let's talk a little bit about schools. As we talk about that, this is brought to you by Sweetie's Teas. Our lady Erin Jones has a little part in this segment. Don't want you to forget by any means that our live stream segment is brought to you by New Wall Street. It is an investment community. But let's talk a little bit. So you're in Wamego, and so is that where you went to schools from there?
I went to school I went to elementary school at a private school, Christian school, from like basically like kindergarten to first grade. Then my third grade year, my second grade, or I went there from kindergarten to second grade. My third grade year, I started public school. And when I went to public school, that was a big adjustment for me because I went from a really, really small class of like my whole class at the private school was like 9 people to a school where just my grade alone was like 80, and it was a 3rd and 4th grade setup. So you were with 160 kids with 3rd and 4th graders. So it was a whole big difference in the environment that I was put in. And I did not adjust very well to that, with being honest with myself. And so my 4th grade year, my parents decided to not do that again, and I got homeschooled for like a semester. So I like kind of had a taste of everything, where I was like private, then I like went public, then I went like, you know, independent with my family and my dad. Like we would follow this curriculum. I'd go to work with him. He owned a painting company, and he, you know, I'd be doing my homework and be done by 10 a.m., you know, and just be chilling with my dad all day, working, you know, chilling. And so I was like, that was 4th grade. I did that first semester, and then I like basically begged to go back and be with friends, you know, be with my friends again. So 4th grade, I went back to St. George. And so St. George was a small elementary school that was between, there's a small town called St. George that's maybe like 500 people. And it's just a small town between Wamego and Manhattan. That's a little bit more like south in between the two towns. And so I lived in like a farm. I lived on a farm in Wamego, but was in the school district of both St. George, Rock Creek, and Wamego. So my parents took me to St. George. St. George had like better public board testing and everything like that. They just performed better like scholastically. So we were a blue ribbon school, which was like top 2% in public school testing, and we had like my brother even got to go to he was waitlisted on a few Ivy League schools after he graduated from our high school. So like we had a really great education around us, but I would say the culture around us was lacking. Like we had excellence in education and testing and all these other things. But like our culture and diversification and like inclusivity was all just not there. And so, when I was the only African American person there, like I experienced a ton of adversity and a ton of racism. So it was just things that like you just adapted, from. But that's like the school that I went to. So Rock Creek was the high school that I went to, and that was Westmoreland, which is a small school or a small town, just like St. George. And St. George, they put their districts together and created a high school called Rock Creek.
Okay. So you didn't go to Wamego High School. Mm-mm. You went to Rock Creek. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you played sports there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So as we're talking about getting to like your senior year, you end up choosing to go to what college? I know Mid-America came in.
I chose to go to Mid-America Nazarene. I had been offered my junior year going into my senior year.
I wish I could show you this picture I found of you back then. I forgot to send it to myself on my phone.
Oh, you're good.
But they'll see it when they get this. They'll see it.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, I'm fine with it. No, I had Mangino my junior year was talking to me a lot from KU, and then when he got fired, I lost contact with KU. Mm-hmm. And I had gotten like interest from a lot of larger schools like that were better than. Actually, KU was good at the time, so I won't knock on KU. Better than they are now for sure. But when
one thing we don't do is KU bashing in this podcast. Now, we ain't gonna say nothing about nothing else. But
it's basketball season right now.
Okay, but I'm just saying, I'm gonna let you finish, but we don't KU bash.
Because hell would freeze over if KU was in a bowl game.
Oh, here we go with this bash. See, let's keep moving. You know what I'm just telling you. At time Grinch, get ready. We're gonna be cutting mics off and everything else.
No, but I went to Mid-America. After my senior year, I ended up getting to go to Mid-America and got to go on a scholarship and study business there. And I was there for like 2 years and enjoyed it, but really hated the culture and the football team there. And
so what made you choose Mid-America? Because you said you kind of, Mangino left from KU, but you had other schools, so why Mid-America was chosen?
Mid-America had, actually at the time when I was looking at colleges, at that time I was kind of like, well, if I'm just going to follow my education and I'm not going to try to go professionally, which at that time I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to. Like I said, I will be honest, like I probably aimed really low for myself, just because of the circumstances financially that my family was in. Like walking on at K-State wasn't really an option for us financially. So that kind of wasn't, I didn't even really entertain that. And so the dream of me like getting to play there like I had started when I was a kid, I just kind of like used that excuse to cover up that dream. And never even really entertained or even looked into the idea of like what would it cost for me to even walk on at K-State, because the opportunity was there. So anyways, when I went to Mid-America, it was because I didn't get those offers, and I was just kind of like, I'm not going to go to the league, so I'll just fall back on my education. I got this great scholarship opportunity for my grades and my sports. And at that time, Mid-America had probably one of the like winningest like NAIA football programs over the last 5 years. And they had competed at the national level, like the national championship level for their division for the last few years before that. And so it made a lot of sense to be in a really competitive football team. And there was a lot of former NFL players. Like I was coached by Eddie Kennison. I was coached by Kimball Anders. I was coached by Dwayne Clemens. I was coached by Frank Raines. Like some of these people, like Frank Raines, he was a coach that was an incredible athlete in his prime. And one time he was like kicking it with some friends. He grew up on the Bay Area, and he's kicking it. And he like personal trained the athletes and stuff in their free time. And one day he's kicking it, and he just don't really follow sports like this. And he's kicking it, and they like the announcer saying one of the people he trained like touchdown Jerry Rice, and that the whole like the room that's watching the game, everybody's going nuts, and he's like, that's my training partner. That's the kid I trained that guy. And so from Jerry Rice's like rookie year to like his 8th season in the NFL, like Frank Raines, one of my coaches, trained Jerry Rice. Like, and so you had a lot of skill set of just a ton of knowledge. Anthony Davis, he played with Ray Rice and Ray Lewis for the Ravens. So he had one Super Bowl. So he had all these crazy stories and just knew this knowledge, about what it was going to take if you did go to the NFL. Like all these guys dreamed of playing. This was the only chance they thought at that level they would get there, is having an in. And all these players had played for the Chiefs. And so they kind of had this in where if there was a really nice player, they could get a tryout with the Chiefs to say, hey, we got a receiver that's actually like, he could make practice squad. You need to hump somebody, and they would make that happen, So there would be times like that where there was connects, and that was just that hope and dream. And then for me, it was just kind of like, yeah, I don't think that will be me, so I'll just go to Mid-America. And that changed quickly.
Okay. So
Yeah.
now from there, you do end up going to K-State,
Yeah.
walking on. What changed?
Probably honestly, it changed pretty quickly. Like the day after I got to Mid-America, I got there, and the coach after the first practice came up to me and was like, so when were you going to tell us? And I was like, when was I going to tell you what? And he was like, well, when were you going to tell us you had 7 fingers? And I was just like, what are you talking about? Like, y'all saw my film, y'all saw the statistics. Like, I don't understand. I came up here a few times, visited with y'all, signed paperwork. Like, I don't get it. And he was just like, well, we offered you a lot of money and gave you a scholarship, and you didn't tell us that you had this issue. So we feel like it's kind of like not a great opportunity here anymore for you to be here. I just don't know what we're going to do with you. And that was the way we ended that meeting. And I remember just like, my heart was just like torn up because like my whole senior year, I mean, I was getting recruited by KU, K-State, Mizzou, Southern Illinois, Boise State, TCU, like all these big name schools. So Mid-America thought I was a steal. So they're telling me all senior year, you're going to be the star. Well, I commit, get there, and then they go, hey, we don't really know what we're going to do with you. So the next day I show up, and they were like, so we're going to redshirt you. And so from the second day on, I knew I don't know if this is going to be for me, and I'm stuck here. I don't have any family here. I don't know how to even get out of this situation to go somewhere else. Turner Gill calls me 3 weeks into the summer saying, hey, we had players drop. Do you want to come to KU? And I said no. So it wasn't that bad. Okay, see, now you laugh.
I'm laughing because, you know what I mean? You wish you had went to KU after you got to Mid-America.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
True.
Okay.
So I just gutted it out. And I mean, I'm gonna be real, there was contemplation of suicide. I definitely thought about quitting school multiple times. What the hell am I here for if they ain't gonna let me play? Then I'm like, well, you came here not knowing you weren't going to go to the NFL, so you should just get your education. And then it was like, okay, well, the staff and faculty's cool, but I ain't cool with this coach and how he leads people. Literally, I had teammates that wouldn't want to be touched by my left hand. They would squirm around. There was a play, I had a little option, and they gave me the option, and I stiff-armed this guy, and they kept playing it over and over and over again in the film study. The coach did. This is the coach. And the coach is playing this play over and over again on film study, I'm thinking I'm about to get recognized and praised for this hard work and me going against the number one on scout team and throwing a stiff arm at him. And he's like, how did you let a guy with 2 fingers like stiff arm you? Was really what was going on.
Wow.
And then his response was, well, funny, let's laugh it off and say, yeah, actually, you know, I didn't even really want him to tackle me because I didn't want him to touch me with that hand. So that was like the response. So it's like the leader of the pack reflected the culture of the team. Mm-hmm. I had stuff stolen before. I had experiences where like people call me crab boy or crab kid or whatever, like crabby. And that's what I'm saying. Like, it was dark. It was bad. Like, I did not feel like I was part of this squad. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Wearing their jersey, I felt like I was on the visitor squad. You know, and it was like there was no respect. And so I felt like I had earned all of that. And I had a lot of great coaches that like stuck it out for me, and just like the defense coordinator was like a great advocate for me, and like he named me the scout team player of the year. So I ended up like having this terrible experience and not great support, working with your number 4 lineman the whole year and trying to just like not get killed against your number 1 defense, because that's what you do on scout team. Mm-hmm. And they're like, you literally, we went to the championship and lost, and the coach came up to me and said, we lost this game because the coach didn't play you, and because you didn't get to play, and because like we don't utilize you enough. And then he was like, that's why you're the scout team player of the year. So he named me scout team player of the year, and I honestly was not expecting that at all. And that was just me like being relentless about proving my head coach wrong. And then I go into the next season, and he puts me on special teams. The defensive coordinator, he got promoted to be special teams coordinator. He gave me a shot and put me on special teams, and I lit it up. And that was when I got to have the opportunity to travel and be with the team, but I still didn't feel like I was part of the team. So that season ended. We went to the national championship, lost again, and then, you know, we're in the exit meeting. He's just like, you know, telling me the head football coach and the defense coordinator and Kimball Anders are on this meeting with me at the exit meeting, and I'm like, hey, like, I just want to be more resourceful to the team, want to like support and like tote the rock some more and like be involved more. And his response was, well, I mean, how about we move you to fullback? And we were a shotgun heavy team. If you don't know what that means, we just don't have a fullback even on the field. Right. And he's telling me I need to like gain weight and be a fullback. And I was just kind of like, well, coach, I really just want to like run the ball more and have the ball more in my hand. And he was just like, yeah, well, honestly, TJ, like, until I see that you have 10 fingers, like, you're never going to run the ball on this football team. And that's when I was just kind of like, damn, like, there's nothing I can really do about that. You know what I'm saying? And so I remember leaving, and I was just like, honestly, like, you know, like how you just try to like keep it all together, and you're like trying to be, because, you know, you're trying to be a man about the situation, and just it's business. At the end of the day, he's trying to protect his job, and this is the way he, for whatever reason, sees fit. But when I was walking out, Kimball like came up behind me and like put my hand on my shoulder, and he was like, hey, listen, son, like, I'm not gonna feel bad for you if I see you on campus here next semester. Like, you need to get out of here. I can't do anything. Even if I put you in, he's just gonna pull you out. And you're a really good running back. You could play somewhere. And so he like told me like, just go, just get out of here. And I left, and then he left too. So it worked out for both of our favors. But that's when I went to K-State, and that whole experience was wild in itself too. Just getting the opportunity to walk on and you know, get that tryout, and then be able to like prove yourself, you know. And it was so kind of crazy. Like when I got to K-State, they were really surprised that I got the opportunity to come there. They were surprised that I transferred because of Mid-America having a good program. And they were just like, well, why? And I told them, you know, what the coach had told me. And they were like, well, did you clear the doctors, you know? Right. checkup? And I was like, well, yeah. And they're like, then what's his problem? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, I never fumbled the football. I never, like, I made it. Because that was the thing. It's like, you can't give them a reason. Like, one fumble is too many fumbles for me to ever have this shot to be first, in my opinion. And so I have to be perfect. And so I just made it a point to never let that happen. I always made it a point to never let one person bring me down. I always made it a point to fall forward. I always made so many, like, points to get and do the little things right. And I think that's what kind of helped me a lot in sports. But when it came to, like, just, like, getting to where I got, it was strictly grit and just, like, a lot of good fortune and a ton of consistency. Like, I was very persistent about trying to get on the squad at K-State. I was very persistent about, like, when I got K-State, I remember, like, I took girls out of the spectrum. I took everything out. I protected K-State, like, in my time. I remember, like, when I got, I'll tell the story real quick. So we had a bye week when I was at Mid-America, my second year there. And so I got tickets to go watch K-State play. And the tickets that I had gotten were in the nosebleeds, like, honestly, like, a row or two from the top. So I could turn around and I could see the parking lot. And I actually remember that before the game, the kickoff and everything, everybody grabs their keys and they're shaking their keys out. And I remember seeing across and seeing all these purple key rings, and then looking across the parking lot and seeing just decks of, like, purple vans, purple buses, purple cars, purple everything. And I remember thinking, like, man, at Mid-America, we, like, maybe had 50 fans that were from the student body. Like, it was a very mild crowd. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And we had merch to sell, but it wasn't that, like, people raved over it. And, like, you saw them rocking it on campus, and it was, like, this cool thing. And you had people, like, put, like, red, like, you know, our colors were red and blue. They didn't, like, make their cars red and blue or anything like that. Like, it wasn't anything crazy. And so I just remember thinking in my head, like, man, this level of play is just about as high in elevation that I am looking at all of it. Like, it is that different to where I'm at. And I was just, like, honestly just taking that moment in, okay? Fast forward a year later, okay? I am waking up with no phone because we gave our phones away Friday night, with a roommate in my room Saturday morning that's on my team. He's a teammate. We're sharing rooms. We get to the complex. All of our gear is laid out. Gloves, socks, shoes, everything's laid out. I put my gear on. They open the door. We fly through, and there's, like, freaking, you know, pom-poms everywhere and all this, like, you know, like, stuff in the air. And I remember looking in the same spot that I was freaking standing in the year before. And I had this eerie moment, and I looked in the sky. I seriously cried like a little kid because I could not believe that I was, like, again, the elevation of where I was a year ago to where I actually was at Mid-America to, like, now be there. So surreal. And just, like, the dream and just, like, everything that I had, like, imagined, and, like, here it is. And you're just like, holy cow, a year ago I was sitting in those seats, and here I am. Like, I can't make this up.
Wow.
This is wild.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So it's just like, it was really, like, you know, a proud, like, it was a moment I was really proud of myself, you know.
Yeah. Good. So let's talk a little bit as we're moving forward. We're gonna see this. I knew this one interview wasn't gonna be enough.
It's so much. Yeah.
It's got to be enough. It's got to be a part two.
Yeah.
Because we got to get back to some more of the K-State and all of those things.
Oh man, I love
and
that.
talk. But I want to talk about two things. I want to make sure we talk about two things. Mm-hmm. I want to talk about your transition from K-State once you come out, and then transition into working.
Yeah.
And get to the Farm Bureau of Financial Services.
Yeah.
I want to get into that.
Okay.
So how did you get into that, the insurance? And
well, because K-State was like a full-time job, we didn't have like the opportunity to do internships or anything like that. It was the summertime was dedicated to football and growth, and then you had summer classes. So I didn't get internships, so I took the first opportunity that I ran with, and I went to like some job fairs at K-State, and I met an insurance advisor that I befriended and was a mentor of mine for some time, and got me introduced into insurance, where I started working at AAA Insurance. Okay. And so I started at AAA Insurance right after college, and I had created this routine in college that was kind of, it's still similar to the routine that I do today at Mid-America, or at K-State. And so anyways, like, when I finally got this opportunity to like, you know, get a big boy job, so to speak, and like move up to the city, I was doing that, you know, for a girl and for myself. And neither of those things worked out, you know, AAA Insurance or the girl. But in the timeline, I was there for like 16 months, and I learned a lot about insurance. And I got my licenses in Missouri and Kansas, and I started selling, and I was Rookie of the Year with AAA. And so when I was Rookie of the Year with them and earning those rewards, that's when I started like going into some other things where I started like networking, and I started doing different things philanthropically for my business. And because of that, I wanted to move more like a boss, where I could have like a team of staff and we could go impact more. And so that's when I found the opportunity to go at Farm Bureau, where they gave me the opportunity to run my own agency. Now, a lot of people don't realize this, but just in the metro, well, let's just break it down, insurance industry. For African Americans, representation is like 2%.
2%, not 5%.
No, it's
2%.
It's 2%.
Okay.
And in that 2%, probably in the metro, for KC Metro, I would guess there's probably, I mean, we're going to include Blue Springs, Raytowns, I'll even throw Belton into this, and Grandview, but probably like 8,500 agencies, I would guess, that sell insurance in some capacity. And I would guess that less than 10 are probably Black-owned. And we were one, I was one of them. And I think that was something that, as I started to get into insurance and into ownership and into like seeing what the rooms look like in the industry and the conversations and like the dress and the attire and the culture and the language and just the way they even presented themselves, like all of that was just over represented in one way that I just wasn't, you know what I mean? And so there was already like this small rub of just like, well, your hair is a little bit too long. Maybe you would sell more if you shaved it down, or maybe if you went clean cut and wore a suit, you would sell more. Like I was Rookie of the Year at Farm Bureau as well, but there was always these like jabs of, well, you owe it to your people to do it like this, or you should try to do it like that. And so obviously like they're not documented, which is my own fault. But also like, I didn't just like put up with it. And so it got to this point where there was like some racial rubs that I would speak on, you know, publicly on Facebook and Instagram about like what I was feeling, like the community of Kansas City was feeling, and what I felt like as a business owner that was African American at the time of George Floyd and the pandemic, of like what I felt like was needed to be said. And when I said those things, the company was like, hey, we don't like that. You know, we don't like that you're challenging us to say something. And it's like, well, I'm challenging you to say something because, and they were like, we don't like the tone. And my response was, well, the person that I was talking to, in full disclosure, was the entire, like the CEO of the company, like the full, she runs everything. And when she got her job, she was a secretary at one point in her career, and in the course of 20-ish years, worked every position all the way to the top to be where she's at. So if anyone who should understand representation and the lack thereof support should understand where I'm at and where I'm coming from. And this is a person I sent a very long-winded email when they got their promotion to do the VP job, thanking them and excited how I think they were a great fit for that position, and they still are. But the issue was that she and I had a disagreement on the tone. And my response to her with that was, well, you have children, right? And she goes, well, yes. And I said, so you've told your kids, don't touch this. Don't go there. Don't say that. Don't do this. You've done that before, right? She goes, well, yeah, of course. Good, great. Well, what if they kept doing it? What if they kept doing it like the 10th time? Maybe they got to the 100th time. Like, do you think your tone would be the same? You think you would ask them the exact same way? Or would you start to demand maybe a threat, or you would take something away, or I'm going to put you in timeout? You're going to give a consequence if they're not going to listen. I'm not even there, but my tone is definitely different. And it's different because this has been happening for so long that I really can't believe that we're having this discussion over my tone right now. And that I was 28 at the time, am talking to a 50-plus-year-old person about a human life that everyone on national news watched die, and it's being repetitively put in our face all the time, and that's not triggering anything for our culture either, right? I mean, we're not even going into the mental health spectrum of men and kids that see that and don't understand why people are afraid of cops, like black people are afraid of cops. It's like, well, the white-owned media, they help with that. Like, they promote those things all the dang time. And you just get desensitized, or you get disgusted. And it just got to this point where I don't really understand how else my tone should be. And so I wanted to be very authentic. And obviously, me being the only African American in the company, and this being a very black and white issue, would have a very much different response to that situation than everyone else. Like, statistically, you could just know that. But they didn't want to hear it. They didn't like my tone. And so that was like something where I was just like, what are we really talking about here? I'm not taking it down. My tone is my tone. If you don't understand where I'm coming from, where I want our company to thrive, and I want our company to stick behind its values and the way that we support people and care about others and service to people. So we should just pivot and actually change with the times, because if we don't, we're going to be so behind the curve, no one's going to know who we are, and I'm going to look like a fool representing a company that has no values that are with the times. And that was like the thing that I was I felt like I was fighting. And so for me, it was just one of those things that as I was pointing out to them and they didn't want any part of it, like a year later, and a lot of unpromises, like things that they said they would do that they didn't do, they were just like, we're done. We're tired of hearing it. We're tired. And they didn't tell me that. They didn't put it in writing. They just said, hey, you have your right to leave us and we have our right to leave you, and effective today, you're gone. And I said, why? And they said, we don't have to give you a reason legally. And I said, oh, sounds interesting. All the conversations about race, and now this happens. Interesting. So, it is what it is, but in that situation, just keep on. I moved forward. I didn't want to hire a lawyer. I didn't want to go there. I'm just moving forward. They're beneath me. Where I'm going and with what I'm creating, they could have been a part of, and they could have supported, and they could literally be right next to, supported by, sponsored by, Farm Bureau, TJ Roberts. Yeah. They didn't want a part of it. They didn't want to do financial literacy training in KCK. They didn't want to be a part of what community was happening in KCK. I presented it to them. I'm opening a coffee shop to recruit more black people into this space, to sell and know more people and make more impact in the community, and to literally just freaking own this. And they were just like, we don't feel comfortable doing that with you. So peace. They literally we don't feel comfortable doing that. And I was just like, okay, well then I'm not changing my plan. I'm dedicated to this. So I know the community needs it. Everyone else is telling me the community needs it. So let's do it.
I love it, man. I appreciate you opening up and talking to us that way. You know, the time crunch is hitting me.
Yeah.
Because we're getting close to our time, so we got to bring something else. Now, we got to talk a little bit about opening up Kinship. You already kind of told us how it began and going. Now tell us a little bit, because this is something that I want people to know, and I want to talk about it on this live stream before we get off the live stream. Kinship Cafe, the home of the Evening Social Podcast right now. I got to say that. I also got to make sure that our listeners know that tonight's live stream is brought to you by New Wall Street, an investment education community. But at Kinship Cafe, in October 2021, you served your first cup of coffee. And from then, I've always heard you say that you're serving coffee with intention.
Yeah.
And explain to our community what that means. What is the intention that you're serving coffee with?
Yeah, so I mean, one thing that's unique with our shop here is because I believe that when you go into new spaces where there has not been culture presented to be represented, you don't go by yourself. So you bring other people with you. And the people that I've brought with me are the vendors that are with me. And so when you do come into Kinship Cafe and you do support our business, we're super thankful and appreciative of that. But you're supporting a culture as well, because you're supporting a lot of the business owners that we bring in that are Black owned. Number two is we do a lot of resource programming here in the Kansas City community as well. And so like financial literacy classes to coffee classes to business seminars to meditation series and yoga and just the whole 9 yards. We really want to promote sustainable living through your mind, your body, and your spirit. And so we focus heavily on the holistic side of conflict resolution, even like training young adults, like kids, to know how to walk and be adult, like honestly men, and knowing how to do that well, and partnering with other nonprofits that also need these resources, and they, you know, some can't afford them, some don't have the location to even host them. So we're being a benefit to their like patrons and their people, but also to our entire community and the people that support Kinship just on the regular. Like, we're providing that service to you as well, so that way you can be your best self and that you can focus on your like sustainability and your zen and like get to know more about you, because I think as you get to know more about you, you get to love more about others. And I think that's a very huge factor where everyone talks about me, I. And it's like, yeah, but you talk about yourself like that so that way you can go do something for someone else. And so one of my favorite quotes by MLK is like, the most urgent and persistent question that you should be asking yourself is, what are you doing for others? So that's just kind of the model I live by.
And I like that. I also heard you say, I want transparency and goodness to be at the center of everything we're doing.
Yeah.
Here at Kinship Cafe.
Yeah.
And I believe it. I see it. You know, one thing that was I've never seen this before. I gotta tell you, this is my first time. I didn't even know they had coffee crawls. You know, I didn't know that. You know, I never knew that.
Yeah. That's a thing.
And so coming to see that and see the people here and see what you had, the vibe,
it was
man,
dope, man.
see the vendors here, see how many different things move, man. That was a beautiful look, beautiful thing, and it really just made me really see your vision of what you want for this type of space and the vibe you want in here.
I mean, I think of Black excellence and what that means to a business and what that means to a community, and like how you should be a part or partner with that, like alignment, if you will. And like a lot of those events are events that I really try to focus on that Black excellence advocacy factor, you know, where I want people, like we did a pop-up specifically for the caffeine crawl because we knew it was white ran, white done, white operated, but the people behind the caffeine crawl were so genuine and were so authentic and developing and creating a relationship with us that when I told them that we were doing a pop-ups and it was going to be part of our culture to share with them, they were so excited. And so they like that day did like a special post where like I sent them a video and they like reposted it, and it was just like, hey, we have this whole ass pop-up that's set up just for y'all, and it's at Kinship Cafe if you've got time after because they do these coffee flights all over the metro. And so they're like, if you're on a flight that doesn't have Kinship on it, make your way to Kinship between now and 2, and you'll be able to be a part of the vibes. And literally we had people that just came from that. So you had people coming into number one, like Kansas City, Kansas, where like this is not like a most happening spot yet. It's coming. I mean, it's happening right now, so it's coming. But a lot of people think of this being super far away, and it's like, no, we're like 5 minutes from like the West Bottoms. You know what I mean? We are right in the heart of downtown KCK, and the way that we market is so that way we can attract and bring more people into this community, because we see a ton of good things happening in this community that I think other people could partner on. And, you know, if you're looking to start a business, like, there's a ton of great opportunities here that are extremely affordable compared to what you might pay in Kansas City, Missouri. So that's just the one thing that I think of a lot of is like, I want to bring people into this excellence and be a good representation of that, but I also want to be inviting to everyone else in the community to show people and highlight people, like, and recognize people all in Kansas City, Kansas, because there's just lots of great talent. Obviously, I found one of the best podcasts, you know, in Kansas City, Kansas. So.
Well, we appreciate that, man. We appreciate partnering with you. Before we go, we're going to shut our live stream down. I got to ask our guy, Chris Dunlap, to come on in. Man, come on in. We got to do this. This gives us a rare opportunity to talk about our live stream segment partner, New Wall Street. It is an investment education community. We're going to have an opportunity to get a couple little talk with him when we come back. But I wanted to make sure our live stream, you see that we're here with a community of partners that we're building to make influence in our community. Before we get out of here, we got to talk about our episode partner, Wilson's Pizza and Grill. It's on 1801 Quindaro in KCK. Our venue partner, where we're at right now, Kinship Cafe at 719 North 6th Street in KCK. And then segment partners, Drip Ultra Pure Water and Sweeties Teas. All right. I'm here with the owner of Kinship Cafe, TJ Roberts, and then also Chris Dunlap with New Wall Street. We appreciate you tuning in to our live stream segment on Jenna Club TV on YouTube. Please subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.